Welcome everybody to deep learning. So today we want to conclude talking about different regularization methods, and we want to talk in particular about one more technique that is called multitask learning.
Also because I'm lazy, so
Multitask learning, we want to extend the previous concept. So previously we only had one network for one task, and then we had transfer learning to reuse the network.
So that is transfer learning, and it has been done in principle for many decades.
But the question is, can we do more? Can we do it in a better way? And there are some real-world examples. For example, if you learn to play the piano and the violin, then in both tasks you require good hearing, sense of rhythm, music notation, and so on. So there are some things that can be shared. Or also soccer and basketball training. Both require stamina, speed, body awareness, body-eye coordination. So if you learn the one, then you typically also have benefits for the other.
We're not starting from scratch because we've been doing this with humans for millennia.
Yeah. So this would be even better than reusing. So you learn simultaneously and then provide a better understanding of the shared underlying concepts. So the idea now is that we train a network simultaneously on multiple related tasks. So we adapt the loss function to assess performance for multiple tasks, and this then gives a multitask learning that introduces a so-called inductive bias. We prefer a model that can explain more than a single task.
The stuff that works best is really simple.
Also, this reduces the risk of overfitting on one particular task, and our model generalizes better. So let's look at the setup. So we have some shared input layers. So these are like the feature extraction layers, the representation layers. And then we split at some point where we go into task-specific layers and then evaluate it on task A, task B, task C. And they may be very different, but somehow related, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to share the previous layers. So several hidden layers are shared between all of the tasks. And as already shown by Baxter in '97, multitask learning of n tasks reduces the chance of overfitting by an order of n.
There's nothing more practical than a good theory.
Instead of hard sharing, you can also do soft parameter sharing. Soft parameter sharing would now introduce an additional loss. So you constrain the activations in the particular layers to be similar. So each model has its own parameters, but we somehow link them together to perform similar extraction steps, yet different extraction steps in the constrained layers. And you can do that, for example, with an L2 norm or other norms that make them similar. Now we still have to talk about the auxiliary tasks. So all of these tasks should have an own purpose. You may also just include auxiliary tasks just because you want to create a more stable network. So one example here is facial landmark detection by Zhang, and they essentially want to detect facial landmarks, but this is impeded by occlusion and pose variances. So they start simultaneously to learn landmarks and subtly related tasks like the face pose, smiling, not smiling, glasses, no glasses, occlusion and gender. So they had this information available. And then you can set this up in a multitask learning framework, as you see here in the network architecture. And in the results, you see that they then have the auxiliary tasks here, but they're actually interested in the facial landmarks. And they compare this to a CNN, a cascaded CNN, and now their multitask network with the auxiliary tasks. And they can show that also the landmark detection is improved by introduction of these auxiliary tasks. So certain features may be difficult to learn for one task, but it may be easier for a related one. So the auxiliary tasks can help to steer the training in a specific direction, and we somehow include prior knowledge by choosing appropriate auxiliary tasks. And of course then tasks can have different convergence rates, so you can then also introduce task-based early stopping. An open research question is, what tasks are appropriate auxiliary tasks? So this is something we cannot generally recommend, but is typically determined by experimental validation.
And there is very little theory behind the best solutions that we have at the moment.
So next time on deep learning, we start with a new block where we look into some practical recommendations to actually make things work. So with all you've seen, you're already pretty far, but there's a couple of hints that will make your life easier. So I definitely recommend watching the next couple of lectures. And we will look into how to evaluate performance and deal with the most common problems that essentially everybody has to face in the beginning. And we also look at concrete case studies with all the pieces that you learned now.
And that was my 1987 diploma thesis, which was all about that.
I have a couple of comprehensive questions. What is the bias variance trade-off? What is model capacity? Then describe 3 techniques to address overfitting. What connects the covariate shift problem and the ReLU? How can we address the covariate shift problem, and so on. And further reading you can find on those links, which I also post in the description of this video. And again, we have a lot of references. So you see that this is quite a few. So in total, we do have, wow, many, 22 references in total. So we will also post them with this video. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next lecture. Goodbye.